Wow, can you believe it? Episode 9 of the AI Bot Show.
It happened fast.
Yeah, it did. I'm Carl Franklin from AppVNext, and that's Brian MacKay from Roster. He's the AI expert. He's been taking us through GPT land. Last week, we started writing a song with GPT, and you were going to use 3 bots. I don't know if we got to the last bot or not, but then you said we're going to start layering these things and or chaining them together in code. So caveat, we're going to be showing C# code today. So if you're not a developer, you still might be able to follow along. It might sound and look a little bit like the Star Trek Enterprise, but I think it's going to be really cool.
Well, yeah, I do think it's going to be cool. So last week we built a song and we got through 2 of the 3 bots, and what we were doing was kind of a manual chaining where we were taking the output from one prompt and making it part of the input for a new prompt. And since then I've been playing with this, and I've got a lot to show. And so we are going to get into code, and I will do my best to try to slow down and explain what's happening so people who are non-programmers can follow along.
Sounds good.
All right. So I think what I want to do first is go into Playground and do manual chaining again with the new prompts just to show people, so people will understand what happens when we get into code and automate all this stuff.
Okay.
All right, so Playground over here. I'm going to just turn our maximum length up to 1,000 or so we have enough space. I've got a pre-written prompt here.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so I've spent 2 hours on this, all told, between coming up with all the prompts and making a little app that chains these together. I'm just going to go through very quickly and explain what's different between this and last week.
Okay.
So first of all, the general flow here is first we come up with a story, and the goal here is to create a hit song. All right, it's a little different than what we were doing with you.
Okay,
we're trying to make an artist who creates like a song that could be legitimately, like a radio hit. Radio.
Yeah, I know.
It would get lots of streams.
Yeah, okay, there you go.
I'm already blowing my credibility as a hit maker. So I worked with GPT to create most of this. So I used the normal process that we've shown so far on the show, where I collaborate with the bot to make things happen. So all these topics, this is from a conversation I had with it about what are the topics, the themes that appear in a lot of hit songs. And then we kind of evolved this artist named Zoe Riot.
Zoe Riot.
Who is pop, punk, electronic music, hip hop, little hip hop in there. And I came up with a general style: empowering, rebellious, themes of individualism, self-expression, challenging the status quo. Basically,
very American,
very like Avril Lavigne, I guess.
Yeah. Okay.
That kind of thing. But it should be fun for this. And then I just told it a format. All right. So this is very intentional. Always include the topic, unique spin, story, and a detail. And then I go into, I talk about what all these are. So the unique spin is a twist on the topic. And it's important to do that first because the way GPT works is it's completing a document. It's always choosing the next most probable token. So if you put things in at the beginning that prime it to do something more interesting, you can get more interesting results from it. So we start with telling it that the topic is first. That's like the starting point. Then the spin, then the story, and then a detail to try to bring it to life, like some little flourish that the songwriter that we send this to next can use to work this out. And then I did a little startup thing. We've seen this in a few of my other prompts where we tell it to just immediately go right into creating a story. So again, I'm going to manually chain these together. We're going to look at what it does, and then we're going to show how you can automate it. All right. So I'm just going to say submit.
Yep. All right. So the topic is love and relationships. Never heard of that topic. Very,
Never.
very unique. The unique spin is love blossoms at a punk rock show amongst a sea of leather jackets, mohawks, and ear-shattering music. Face melting would be the word that I would use, but okay. The story is Zoe. Our heroine is a charismatic pop-punk vocalist who is not just known for her powerhouse vocals, but also for her quest for individualism and rebellion. All right, so what I'm getting already is that it's a story about the singer, and that's going to be a song. So it's a sort of a self-aggrandizing song, perhaps, which is
perfect
in the genre, right?
Yeah.
During an underground music festival in her city, she unexpectedly locks eyes with a stranger who seems as wild and free-spirited as she. Amidst the rebelliously rhythmic punk music, they sway and headbang together, embracing their individual and unique personalities. As the electric guitar screams in the background, Zoe realizes a profound love brewing for this distinctive soul who mirrors her unusual aura. The connection, like their music, is raw, undiluted, and beautifully chaotic. It's an enchanting punk rock love story pen. Boy loves girl, girl doesn't love boy, boy kills girl.
Oh, God. Carl, that went dark.
I think that was a quote from Megadeth or something like that in the 90s.
Okay.
All right, so
different time.
Yeah. It's an enchanting punk rock love story penned amidst crowd surfing, loud cheers, clashing cymbals, and an array of colorful mohawks. So the detail is the high point of their connection occurs when Zoe, in a moment of electric energy, tosses her studded leather jacket into the energetic crowd, only for it to be caught by this stranger. He dons it, their eyes meet, everything outside their world fades into the background. The jacket, marked with her band's logo, becomes a symbol of their infectious, rebellious love, forging their bond deeper and more intensely. Forging intensely. Grammar. Okay. All right. So Zoe isn't painted in a probably a girlfriend, the light of a girlfriend that you want to have, is she? If she's that easily swayed, she just fell in love with this guy, and then she falls in love with a guy who catches her jacket.
Well, it's the same guy, right? No, are you saying
it's the same guy?
It's got to be the same guy. She can't be falling in love twice in one
because
song with random
they're
strangers.
Rebelliously. That's what I got. Because I read the story first, so maybe the detail is how they met, because it doesn't really say, right? Unexpectedly locks eyes with a stranger.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So we could edit this, but we're not going to, because
no.
The idea is to chain this together. So we're just going to go with whatever weird thing it came up with.
Yeah, go ahead.
And we're going to move that into the next one. Okay. So over here, I'm going to take my prompt for creating songs from stories.
Yep.
And again, I tell it who Zoe Riot is. It's the exact same text. We've got some details here about how it should create this stuff. So I'm going to go back over here. I'm going to grab this, no edits, and just paste it right in as a user prompt. Let me increase this.
So the first one makes the story. This one makes the song, just like we did last week.
Yep, that's right. Just like last week. It looks like a two-step process, by the way, but there's actually more steps going on, because this is kind of a step and this is kind of an important step. So I found that asking it to create the hook up front creates some cool interactions and tends to make the song better, because it builds the song around the hook, and the hook tends to be pretty good. Like what it comes up with tends to be pretty good. So name, hook, lyrics, and musical idea. All right, so I should be able to just paste this in and submit and get back something pretty good. Leather Jacket Love.
So this is the song. Does a punk lyricist use the word amidst? I'm just asking for a friend.
This one does.
Amidst.
Amidst shows up a few times here.
Yeah.
But it's okay if it's wrong, because the next step is a music executive who will approve or deny this song.
Right, okay. So we're not going to sweat the details of this like we did last week. We're just going to take what it gives us and bring it over to the executive, right?
Yeah, and then once they approve something, then we'll sweat the details. So we can just skim over what it came up with here.
Okay. The hook is, amidst the mohawks and the screaming notes, we found a punk rock love we got in our hearts and leather coats. Oh, so bad.
That's a pretty bad hook.
That's really bad. All right, verse 1. Underneath the neon lights, amidst the chaos, feels so right. Anarchy and music loud. We found love in a noisy crowd. Your eyes met mine, the electric haze. Our unconventional love sets my soul ablaze. Oh, this is so bad.
Okay, so we don't have to read all this. I actually hope.
Please
I'm actually hoping that when we pass this into the executive, this is the worst one that I've seen it do. I've done a couple that were like, wow, this is pretty good. But hopefully the executive is going to look at this and barf and reject it.
Right, okay.
So let's take it right over to the next one. So let me get the song and I'll paste this over here. And let's just look at this, okay? Because there's a little more here. So you are a brilliant and critical music industry executive who decides whether a song has the potential to be a hit. Okay. You understand what songs... That's actually a little redundant. Let me remove that from over here where you can't see it as well. So it's just gone for good. All right, so... I talked to GPT and came up with a bunch of criteria for what make good songs. So there's like originality, impact, relatability, structure, a whole bunch of different things.
Okay.
And then I told it who Zoe is. Again, same text. And then there's some commands.
Right.
Evaluate, decide, and revise. This one we're not going to use. I was just playing around with it. But evaluate first causes it to look at the song and write out a paragraph about strengths and one about weaknesses and a conclusion.
Okay.
And this is an important sentence right here because it calibrates how likely it is to reject something.
Right.
Like previously, I've had it be too aggressive with rejecting and too open to accepting things. So I'm not sure if I've hit the right balance yet. We're going to find out because this song sucks and I hope they reject it. And so we're gonna give it the evaluate command and then give it the decide command. All right.
Okay.
So this is an assistant prompt. We want a user prompt. I will say.
Oh, what's the difference?
User prompts are what we tell it, and assistant prompts are what it tells us. So I could train it by typing in some whatever response that I think is appropriate, and then as the conversation goes on, it would learn from that.
Okay.
So yeah, you'll see that when I do /evaluate, what it comes back with will be an assistant prompt. But I am able to write assistant prompts myself, and that is important.
Okay, cool.
All right, so we'll say go. All right, so it's going over the strengths. The lyrics are highly relatable.
Oh, it's really liking it.
Well, we'll see.
Okay.
We'll see. There are moments where clarity is compromised for the sake of creative language. Some parts might demand a couple of listens to fully understand the storyline. Also, the presence of cliche phrases such as set my soul ablaze and loves the wild loudest it's always heard undercuts the originality of the lyrics and may not resonate with a wider audience. The bridge falls a bit flat in connecting the song's underlying sentiment.
Okay.
Conclusively, the song exhibits the artist's personality and style and has notable commercial potential given its catchy chorus and appealing narrative. However, so it's got some pros and cons. Let's see what it says.
So you're going to say decide?
I'm going to say decide.
All right.
And I hope it rejects it.
Rejected.
In the dustbin with you. So
all right.
So all of this entire process that we just did is something that, so what I want to do is make a loop in code that creates songs, goes all the way through the process we just did, and it only stops when one is approved.
No kidding.
And in theory, what we get back is better than what we just received here. We should only see the good stuff.
So
right?
This is funny. Have you done this before we recorded this to see if you got anything good?
I just finished it a couple minutes ago.
So this is going to be a surprise to you.
But this approach, this type of flow chaining is something I've done a bunch for different purposes. And this is actually not it's probably worth saying that this is not really the best use of chaining. It's an interesting use and it's fun, but I use chaining a lot when I'm just doing like complicated business processing, like I think I'm going to show eventually a game. I might write a little mini game where two gladiators fight in an arena and it's just text. and it's like translating you hit the guy for 2 hit points into like a narrative, and show how chaining can be really interesting that way too. Let me share my other window. All right, so this is Visual Studio, and I wrote this in C# because I write C# all day.
Is this a console app?
It's a console app. So when I run this, a scary little console is going to appear and run through everything. So I'll just quickly go through the structure of this thing. Over here in the prompts folder, you'll see there's 3 MD files. Those are markdown files, and those are the prompts that we've looked at. In fact, I've been copying them and pasting them from this into the playground.
Okay, good.
And then I've got secrets, which we're not going to look at because that has my OpenAI key, and I'm trying not to share it with the internet. And then I've got a bunch of code in here for just working with these prompts that I created.
Okay. So I see the word do on line 21. And to those who don't understand what that is, we're setting up a loop.
Yep.
So all this code that's in a bracket here is going to be repeated until you reach the keyword break or return, either one.
It's way down here.
Way down
while.
there. Yeah. So the while is the condition. In other words, when it gets down through the first time, if approved is true, it's going to break. And if approved is not true, it's going to go back and do the loop again. And you can see on line 85, he's said approved equals true. So there's the condition.
I feel like I should say that this is not my most beautiful code. I wrote it just now. I just finished it. And
that's fine.
I would normally not have a giant amount of text like this. I'd refactor it a lot, but it's fine for this purpose. So yeah, there's this, we make this variable. We say it starts off not being approved.
Mm-hmm.
Well, first of all, I make my API client. And this is Ouroboros, which is a wrapper around something called Batalgo, and it just makes it a little easier to work with. And we'll see a kind of cool use for Ouroboros later on. And then I don't think we even use this. That could probably go away, but I'll leave it for now. Yeah, and this is me just saying this is what's going to appear in the console. So it's going to start out and say in white, generating story. Yep. All right, so this is just saying, get me the prompt for story generation.
Mm-hmm. And that's static. That's never going to change.
Well, that's correct. It won't change.
Yeah.
It won't change. That's right. And this is where we actually call OpenAI and say, take that prompt and run it. And then we say, did it work? If it didn't, show an error and quit, basically. If it did work, keep going. Mm-hmm. Put the result into this variable called story, write it to the screen, and then move on to generating the song. Okay. And we do basically the same thing. So remember how when we were working on the song, we had a system prompt, and then we made a user prompt where we pasted the story in. This is exactly that. This is chaining in code. So we make a list of chat messages. We make our system prompt, which is the song prompt. And then we take story, which we made that up here. We pulled it out of the story result. Right. And we just add it as a user prompt. And then we tell it to go.
Okay.
And then we get into a more complicated and interesting situation because when we deal with the critic, there's more steps involved. So let's look at that. This is where Ouroboros kind of does its thing. All right, so we get the song back, make sure that it works, cram the song, all the lyrics and everything into the song variable, write it out to the console, and then we say generating music exec evaluation. And this is what Ouroboros does. It makes it so you can queue up a bunch of, there's a lot of code involved in just calling things over and over again. But with Ouroboros, you can say, you make this thing called a dialogue, and you put the system message in, and you put the user message in, and then you say send /evaluate, and then you basically just tell it a bunch of commands, and it runs them all at once. And
very cool.
What this is you can name the results, which down here we're going to ask for them again and print them out.
Wow, cool.
So it does all the things, and then it emits it all. And the important part is that down here, we grab the decision, which should be approved or rejected, and we try to clean it up just in case something weird came out, because once in a while it'll be a little bit off. So we trim the white space.
Trailing spaces, white space, carriage returns, anything like that. And you force it to uppercase.
Yeah. And then I just say, does it start with approved? So even if there's something after it that's not, like if it's sent some extra stuff, we'll just ignore that. It's got to start with approved and we're good. And if it is approved, we set the approved variable to true and we write it out to a text file so we don't screw up and lose it. And then the whole thing will either repeat until we get one that's approved, or if we got one that's approved, it will continue through to here and it'll say done and we'll end. Yeah. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to run this.
All right, so let me just say that this is going to go slower than we have time. So what we're going to do is take out all of the time in between these outputs, if you will. And then once we get one that is approved, we'll go back and look at it. All right, so here we go.
Okay, so we've got a hit, Carl.
Yeah, what is it?
Let's go up and look at it. Love is a revolution. In a world that's black and white, we paint our truth. Love is our revolution, baby. And the canvas, our youth. Actually, not so bad. Not so bad. Just a small town girl with fire in her
You
soul.
almost sang the Journey song.
Met
a city boy. Wait a minute. Was he born and raised in South Detroit? I'm not sure. Have I heard this before?
It's, a judge would say it's a different song.
Of course.
So
hey, if George Harrison can write something based on Something in the Way She Moves by James Taylor, that was actually the first song. And he wanted to use that line. Isn't that crazy?
How did it go?
Oh, well,
was that with
James Taylor was cool about it. No, he didn't get sued. No.
Yeah. Well, I know when Vanilla Ice did Ice Ice Baby, he lost a lawsuit about that bass line.
Oh, because Under Pressure. Well, that was the tune, right? A tune is a bit more than a line of, a single sentence or something.
It's true.
All right, so what do we got here? It's a world that's black and white. We paint our truth. Love is our revolution, baby, and the canvas, our youth. We'll shout our love, let it echo in the night. This is our battle cry. We're ready to fight.
Ooh.
All right, so what does he say about it, the executive?
You want to start with that?
Yeah, let's look at the musical idea.
Well, this is more like, this ends up being more
the
like
description of it.
Production and it's
okay.
But the lyrics are well crafted, offering a fresh take on the familiar topic of love by framing it as a personal revolution of sorts. The hook is clever and catchy, making a strong statement that aptly embodies the rebellious tone of the song. Moreover, the strong narrative, so he likes it. It's easy to imagine the potential for setting these lyrics to music, especially given the detailed musical ideas provided.
Now, here's the thing, though. So all throughout my experience of talking to people about ChatGPT and GPT API, it's very eloquent. But is that just BS? Like, is it really evaluating based on your criteria? Is it really an expert, or is it just randomly making language here? Like, that's the thing I don't understand.
I mean, it's not going to have the instincts of Jimmy Iovine or somebody who...
Well, I don't think it's going to have any instincts, really.
Right. I mean, it's not going to have the depth of... I mean, how do you even describe what it doesn't have? It doesn't have all the experience. It doesn't have experience. It has text. And I told it to try to evaluate on these different axes. Now, if you want to really make it do it and see it doing it, I could have asked it. In fact, I had to tell it not to evaluate the song along each of those criteria. So you could actually have it say for each of those criteria I provided. If you remember, there's a whole bunch. In fact, I'll just read them off real quick. Originality, emotional impact, relatability, structure, melodic potential, clarity. You could have it evaluated according to each one of those and then make a determination.
Well, I thought it was doing that because you told it to do that, didn't you?
Well, it is doing it, but if you make it do it explicitly, you might get more of what you're looking for. So if we actually did a multiple step process where we first had it rate the song along each of those axes, kind of,
right,
and then do the evaluation, you might get something even more even closer to what you're looking for.
Like if the ratings could have, 1 to 5 stars based on that criteria, and, evaluate every verse based on that, and then average them up and add them up. And if it's above 3 or 4, then it's approved, right?
Yeah, there are many approaches you could take. You could also have this feed its feedback into another songwriter who tries to maybe even go line by line and fix it. You could make it so that instead of just extruding a finished song, it's only doing one line at a time, and there's a conversation between bots where they are approving and denying and just like spending.
Yeah, but you kind of have to take a song in its entirety, right? For example, some songs set up a negative kind of thing right at the outset, and then resolve it at the end, right? Like, so there's a song by James Taylor called "Look Up From Your Life," and it starts with "So much for your moment of prayer. God's not here, there is no there, lost in the stars, that's who you are, left here on your own," right? And some people might read that or hear it and say, well, I don't want to hear this kind of atheist kind of BS, I believe in God and blah, blah, blah. But the song is actually a very inspirational tune. And in the chorus is, "We must find you a way to look up from your life." You know what I mean? So if you just take that first, verse doesn't fit the end goal of the song, and you can't stop there. You have to take the whole thing in its entirety. So, those kinds of things are going to be very hard for AI to understand, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. And again, this is not really how I love to use this.
Sure,
like,
yeah.
Trying to get it to create, like I would actually not consider this a finished product. I haven't looked at it carefully, but I would think that if you wanted to proceed with this, a human should take this and do some work with it,
right?
To make it work. In fact, you may not be able to just pull out a guitar and like figure out how to make
right. And again,
work.
As we learned last week, you can't really say, how do we make it not expose the plot and the setting and just with the details. And it didn't really do a good job of that. And when you told it to use a particular rhyming scheme based on an existing poem, it didn't do it either. It was better, but it didn't do it, right? So, yeah. But it's a good exercise.
Yeah. Rhyming is a pretty new thing for this. I remember when, I want to say it was during GPT 3.5, it suddenly could rhyme for the first time, and it blew everybody away. So now we're like, oh, it's not rhyming like, this certain poet that we asked it to, but this is light years beyond what it could do just a couple years ago. So I think we'll get better, but
it's cool though. So in a business setting, like you would do chaining on more objective and easier to how would you say, easier to analyze data.
Well, yeah, I'll give you a real example. So one of the things we're working on is at Roster, we work with survey data, and summarizing it. Summarizing it is really valuable to us. Summarizing it to help our ops team work on it a little more efficiently, because we get sometimes, we'll have a survey that has like hundreds of comments on it. And they need to be able to understand like the gist of what's going on. And even just to get the gist, you're summarizing multiple things, like chunking things down into pieces that get plugged into prompts.
Yeah.
And I have one that's 6 prompts. It's chaining 6 prompts to get what ends up being a really good result at the end that is actually good enough to show a human who's like paying for this service to help them understand what they need to work on. Yeah.
Well, it's always been good at summarizing, right? Like, and that was one of the criticisms that teachers had, because their students were saying, summarize Moby Dick in, 4 paragraphs, so many words, and it would do that. And, another thing would be like, make a rap song from the story of whatever, Hansel and Gretel.
Yeah, you can.
And it would do that. Yeah. So it's good at summarizing stuff that's already there. In this case, it's using human intangibles, The criteria is very human.
Yes, but it's good at language.
Mm-hmm.
It's better at language than it is at, telling it to give stars to something. Like telling it.
Right.
One thing you can do with chaining that Ouroboros actually supports is to tell it to only respond using a Likert scale. And a Likert scale is something like, maybe a 5-point scale with like strongly disagree at one side and strongly agree at the other side.
Sure.
So if you wanted to say like, how original is this, or how relatable is this, you could say to respond using this one Likert scale. And that's really cool because you can convert a Likert scale into numbers and work with it really efficiently in code. But as for what you can do with this, this is also how agents work. And we did that show on the state of generative agents.
Yep.
And what we've built here is really like a limited specialized agent that is just like a very crude attempt at writing a song. But it does a better job than an agent would probably do because it's just purpose built for this one thing. And there's a million ways you could try to do this.
Right.
And this is just one.
Well, it's still very, very cool. And I'm going to be digging out that library and doing some C# development with it very soon, because I can think of, real world scenarios where I'm going to be using chaining, and I bet the viewers are too. So thank you, Brian.
It was a blast.
All right. We'll see you next week. Bye. Oh, maybe we won't see you next week because I'm going to be in Tuscany.
Oh,
so we'll see you in a couple of weeks.
Teaching Blazor in a castle.
In a castle. That's right.
Normal stuff.
Yeah,
Normal stuff.
the usual. All right. See you in a couple of weeks. Bye-bye.